Hey everyone. Thanks for joining us here on this lovely Thursday. My name is Ben Pollock. I lead the marketing team here at Parabola. We're really jazzed that you're joining us today and psyched to kick off a series that we'll be holding bi-weekly, where we're demoing different parts of the Parabola product. Today, we're going to start off with our amazing Chief of Staff, Paul Malloy, who's going to be demonstrating how our AI capability helps our prospects and customers parse and extract PDF data at scale, transforming it into their internal formats, and ultimately embedding that into their existing processes. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Paul for him to get going.
Awesome. Thanks for the introduction, Ben. And thanks everyone for taking the time out of their afternoon. I know it's a lot to ask for on a holiday week, Thursday morning for some, afternoon for others. Like Ben said, really just thrilled to kick this off. I think this is one of a feature that we rolled out here at Parabola a couple months ago, and really the initial usage has been so incredibly strong that we thought really just want to show off some of our capabilities here, talk with this group about how we're seeing some of our customers really use this tool to drive at scale change and improvement for their business. So over the next 40 minutes or so here, we'll do just a very quick introduction to Parabola. I know have a really healthy mix of existing customers who are already working with and using Parabola for all sorts of stuff, but also do have a lot of new folks as well. So want to make sure we're all going into the demo with a shared understanding of the tool. Then we'll spend the majority of our time talking about PDF parsing, showing off the product, really giving folks a sense for what Parabola can do. And then I will do my best to stay on top of the Q&A as questions are coming in. But if I don't, I apologize, and I will do my best at the end here to make sure we have time to revisit anything or any questions you all have as we are going through the demo here. Great. So with that said, let me do a very brief introduction to Parabola for those that are new. And then I really do think it's one of those tools where the best demo we can do, or the best introduction I can give you all to the product, is actually just opening up the product and showing it to you live. But before we jump in there, Parabola is the spreadsheet alternative where businesses combine the data running throughout their company to create automated processes. We work with all sorts of really exciting customers across freight, logistics, supply chain, e-com. But really, I think what I want to stress about Parabola is that incredibly horizontal tool that's able to work with all sorts of data, no matter where it is in your business, bring it into one visible shared place, manipulate, work with that data, and then take it out of Parabola and inject it back into your business. And so I know we have some folks, like I said, from our existing customer group here, also have some new folks representing financial service industry, e-com, education. Really thrilled to have you here. Really excited to be talking about Parabola and just specifically with our PDF step today and with many more of our features in the future, really just highlight some of the great and exciting stuff that we're working on over here. So without further ado, let me jump now over into our product. Again, for those who are existing customers, this will probably look very familiar. For those that are new, let me spend a moment or so here just orienting us all. So this right here is the Parabola canvas, and I am what we call the canvas, excuse me, and I am in what is called a Parabola flow. And this is kind of the workspace where I am doing what I just previously described, that action of bringing in data, manipulating it, working with it, understanding that data, transforming it, and then ultimately packaging it and bringing it elsewhere, or using that data to inform an action. Here in Parabola, you can see, if I just open up our search bar up top, all of the different ways that you can instantly, right out of the box on this canvas, start working with that data. And so the first piece, like I said, is going to be getting that data in. And so you can see here everything from pulling from a CSV, pulling from a Dropbox, pulling from an Excel file. And where we're going to spend most of our time today discussing is pulling from a PDF file. There are two ways right now that Parabola can ingest and bring PDF files into the platform: the pull from PDF file and the pull from inbound email step. And you can see here, there's even in the call out some mention about the PDF capabilities as well. I'll come back here. We'll talk a little bit too at the end about transform, right? Because what I do want to stress is, in addition to just having an incredible best-in-class parsing tool, right? We can pull information off of a PDF. One of the things places where Parabola is truly differentiated from just a regular PDF parsing tool is our ability to then do something with that data, right? Combining that PDF data to other data sets in your business, emailing that PDF data cleaned, whether it's in a CSV file or a Slack, or sending it into a Salesforce or a Dropbox, right? It's more than just the ability to parse, it's the ability to then act on that data. And so once we actually talk in a bit more about how we parse, I'll talk a little bit about how we can actually transform and take that data elsewhere. And I'll show off a real use case, like a more production level use case that's give you a better sense beyond just the single step here. But to talk a little bit about our PDF step, and I'll open it up here just so you all can get a sense of for what pulling a PDF looks like in Parabola. When we bring in a PDF step, we're first prompted to bring that file, PDF file, into the step, and then we can start with our configuration. Before I start talking at all about the configuration, I think it's helpful just to explain to everyone how the technology behind this actually works. So Parabola's PDF parsing step uses a combination of a text recognition OCR software in addition to a vision-based large language model. And what that actually means in practice, and the way that I like to talk about it, and you know, whether it's my friends, customers, or people that I'm trying to get onto the platform, is that Parabola is really ingesting and looking and reading information from these documents just like a human would, right? The OCR capabilities allow us to pull information from the file, but then the large language model allows us to assign meaning, assign value to that data. And so it's not just our ability to extract text from a file, it's our ability to then spatially understand that the information in that file, where on that file that information was, actually assign meaning to it beyond just simply recognizing that it was on the page to begin with. And so I can show you in the configuration how there are different ways to change the instructions that we're giving the tool, both actually the OCR and the large language model component, to fine-tune the information that we're pulling off the file. And so what I'll do here is once you drag your file into the pull from PDF step, you can see it here. This is a fictional invoice here from Parabola Logistics. But just so we're all understanding what's on this file, there are, you know, a somewhat complicated document, right? There's some information here, like the invoice date, that only is going to appear once. There's other information down here, charges that are in almost table format, right? You have a 2-column table with I think 11 rows here. And then if you look in the middle section here, a lot of information about estimated arrival time, where it's getting delivered. This kind of floats in between being a singular value and a table-based value, inconsistently spaced, a little messy. Would probably, you'd think, require a human being to actually come in and get information off this page if you wanted to do that at scale. Not to mention, if the next time you get a version of this document, it's blurred or it's shifted a little bit, how can you know reliably that a tool can consistently pull the right information for you? Next thing I'll just call it is there's a second page here, a lot of white space. Oftentimes we see tools struggle with white space and struggle to really know what to do with that. And so wanted to make sure we include that in our demo here. All the second page is it's the summation of the invoice. So if these are your line items that are reflected on this document, what's the total? A very common use case, and something we'll talk about later, is oftentimes our customers want to understand, does the total I'm being billed on the invoice reflect the sum of the component parts? And if there's a variation, I'd like to be notified of that such that I can reach back out to that vendor and notify them that I've been, you know, most likely you'll want to notify them when you've been overcharged. Probably not as important if there's an undercharge. So great, this is the document. What does Parabola actually do with it? So the first thing that Parabola wants to do is it wants to take a stab at understanding what information you want to pull from this document. And so as soon as you drop in a file, we will do an auto detection to try to pull any table-based information we can from that file. And so what you can see here, if I click into this, in auto detected table, here are the different tables that our AI was able to detect on its first pass. So if you think back to our document, it's trying to split this into multiple subtables and then return that back to us. And so again, if I'm looking through these, let's say that I'm looking for that table that was at the bottom. I want my line items and the total amount. I can see here from all these different tables, a description, charges in US dollars, the charges summary. That's probably the table I want. I want to be able to sum up the totals from this file. So I'll tell the system, the AI, that's actually the table I want. And you'll see here, Parabola will prompt me to update my results. While I do this, I'll just talk a little bit about Parabola, and we'll see this calculation taking place. What's so unique and cool about Parabola is that while this is calculating, I can leave and take other actions in the flow. You don't need you're not stuck waiting for one thing to finish in order to be building and doing work elsewhere. And you also don't need to run the flow end to end to see the results. We will consistently let you click into every step in your flow to see the information as it's being populated. And so you can see very visually how your data is being transformed. If you're asking the step to perform a certain action, in this case, asking the AI to return a certain thing, you can see here live in the flow view how Parabola is actually interpreting that data. While this loads, I'll also just call out a couple other things about the configurations here. So the most common way that our users are using or choosing how to get their information from their PDF files is going to be this auto detection of tables. Our AI is quite good at assigning and finding the values or making an assumption for you. But if you'd rather not do that, we also offer the ability to, one, almost as like an OCR would, just return all of the information in a single row with comma separated values. So you can, in a less structured format, just return everything text-wise that's returned on the page. Or we can let you custom define a table. So you can come in here, and we'll see this once this completes calculating. We could just manually add columns. So I could say, I want a column for a description, tell the AI what to look for. I want a column for the origin, tell the AI what to look for. The reason we suggest doing the auto detection is that it is quite manual of a process to actually define all of these one by one, right? And so using auto detection can be a much more superior, faster way to hopefully save you time and let the AI do its thing. Some other things I will call out, right? So in addition to columns, many files also have what are called keys. And again, we try to make this as clear as possible. We have a wealth of documentation out there about these things, but keys are going to be items on this document that appear outside of a table. So this would be something like here, this invoice number. It's a one-off. It appears once on the file. It's not referenced in any way, shape, or form in table-like data. A way that I like to think about it is it's a floating value. And so what we can also do is just tell the AI manually, we can add a key and say, I would like to pull the invoice number. We can tell the AI what a sample or an example of a key value looks like. And then we can give some additional instructions. Maybe that invoice number is commonly located in the same part of the file page, right? Invoice number will be located in the top right. It is typically a 9-character number with starting with a letter and then followed by 9 digits. Again, once this loads, we can take a look and see what that looks like. Let me just pause here. I see, I'm just going to check in on the question Q&A as well. Great. Yeah. Oh, well, let me come back to it just in time. That's a great question, though, Andrew, and I definitely will come back to that. It looks like we now have our data, so let me jump back in here. So again, relatively quick process. Like I said, we asked the AI to pull all the information from the charges summary. And if we just go back to our document, right, this is the charges summary. We have 2 columns, description and charges in US dollars. And what's so cool, and again, I think this is where we're seeing the OCR and the large language model at play. We are not just pulling information. We are pulling information and putting it in a workable format, assigning like real meaning to that data. We now actually have a table, something that we could export as a CSV, something that we could compare against other data in our, elsewhere in our business. This is an incredibly like workable data set now that we are able to generate automatically by pulling directly from this PDF file. And so some other things, like I was saying, well, let me just add some keys just to show off how this works. So let's say we wanted to pull the invoice number. Can show you just how customizable this is. Invoice number. And as always, anytime we're working with rule setting for AI, the more information, the better. I think with a 2-page document, we can get away with not being incredibly prescriptive. But as always, these tools will work better when we're giving more information. And so in this particular case, I know that the format is a letter and then 9 digits. And so I'm going to put that in there. I'm not going to just copy directly the invoice number because I want to show that this is dynamic and able to deal with. You don't have to, present the exact information, and the AI is able to make that determination for us. While this loads, I'll talk a little bit about, and so what's also, just to give you a sense of what this is going to do, table values are very simple, right? A row for each value in that table. Keys are different. They only exist once. And so Parabola wants to keep this in a table format, wants to keep this workable. And so what we're going to see is that if this key identification works, for every row in the charges summary table, we should now have a column invoice number that is just populated down. So we know in this master data set, if we were to filter on invoice number, it would just return these values from this charges summary. While this loads, let me just talk a little bit about some additional configuration settings we have. The first is on fine-tuning. We have now at Parabola parsed over 100,000 pages of documents. We have seen everything from, man, I can't even imagine how many different documents we've seen. We've seen everything from report cards to bill of ladings to commercial invoices to packing lists, you name it. We've seen it, we've parsed it. Some of these are admittedly far more complex than I could have ever imagined. Some have handwritten signatures, some have stamps on them. And what we can do here with the fine tuning is just present a little bit more information about, or give meaning that maybe only exists in our head to what that file is. It'll, again, one of these things that will only help the tool be more performant in returning accurate information for you. And then finally, on some advanced settings, we have a couple of, options here. As we're talking about product demonstrations and just showing off Parabola, we always want to make this as configurable as possible. And so we try to especially with AI steps, not just build things that work one way, but that can be configured, variable, and work to meet your specific needs. One of the problems, I think, as you can see with this running a little slower, admittedly, than I typically think, is we are using OpenAI and a GPT model here, and sometimes we are a bit at the whim of them in terms of compute and processing power. But it is because of that and the use of that model highly variable, and we like to pass on that configurability to the user. And so a couple of things that I will just call out here. We have 2 versions of text extraction, an advanced one that is slower, or a simple one that does like a very quick once over with the OCR model. Customers can always choose, if they're not satisfied with the information they're pulling from their PDF, to use the advanced version. The trade-off there, and we try to make that clear in the tooltip, the trade-off there is that the performance might be a little bit slower. Similarly, as I mentioned, one of the things that happens with OpenAI or using the GPT model is that there are occasionally errors that we're receiving from them. And so by default, all of our steps that are using those third-party models are leveraging them for querying. If there is a failure not related to anything in Parabola, we will default to retrying to make sure that if some third-party system is impacting our ability to parse information for you, it does not impact or impede your ability to get results or impact a production level flow. Similarly, these models are changing all the time, right? In addition to the work we are doing to enhance and improve what we are packaging and presenting in Parabola, so too are the large language models we rely on, pulling additional information. And so you can always set to auto-update prompt versions. And I'll come back to this in a second. The reason that this is off by default is that with each one of these changes, some of your rule sets or your fine-tuning your configurations could be interpreted differently by the new model. And so if you are getting the results you're expecting and it's working well, you may actually not want to auto-update it as it might cause unexpected issues in the future. And then finally, the last one here is page filtering. So we're quite fortunate, or for the sake of this demo today, just using a 2-page document. But we do have the ability with page filtering to say, I'd like to keep the first 1 page or just the last page, or give me pages between 1 and 4. And so if you have a 100-page document that you worry might take quite a long time to parse, you only need something that's on the second page every time. Page filtering is a great way to action on that and expedite the process of extracting information from that file. Great. And so if we come back, if we come back to the data that pulled, you can see here by adding this key, we returned the key number without telling it. We said where it was loosely located. We told the system the general format to expect, but you can see that our PDF parsing tool was able to identify that number. And again, this is what's so important, not just the identification of that number, but the ability to identify it and then assign it a value and put it into this table in a way that's actually meaningful for us, right? As we're thinking about turning this into a CSV, sending this to another part of our business, exporting this as a report, right? It's now in a format that's workable when we're taking it from this, a single value here, translating it into this table-based format that we can now use in other parts of our operation. I'm gonna take a pause there. What I next want to do is go and talk a little bit about how great I got the information I need off of my PDF. What do I actually do with that? How are other companies, customers, people who are using Parabola, what are they actually doing with that information? And so I want to switch gears a little bit to show off a more production level flow that actually uses this same invoice. So we can kind of go from what we've been looking at here and show you what that kind of looks like in production. Before I do that, though, just want to call out a great question from someone here, just to hear a little bit more about the use cases that we're seeing our customers do with our PDF parsing tool. Like I said, I think seeing a lot of files similar to this, right? Bill of ladings, commercial invoices, freight invoices. And so a very common use case we're seeing for both our logistics supply chain and our e-com customers is freight audits, right? And so seeing that from the incredibly small to the incredibly large organization, the ability to take a PDF-based invoice, almost all of, I think a statistic I was shared the other day is about 80% of the invoices, freight invoices, one customer quoted to me that he is receiving were coming in PDF format. Previously had a team manually going one by one through these files. With Parabola, with a single automated flow, able to, at scale, pull that information off of those invoices and then compare it to, in this case, data in their ERP, but also able to compare with data in a WMS or really anywhere else in your system, and ensure that what you're seeing on your invoices is reflected elsewhere in the other parts of your business. Great. And then I know I very quickly mentioned that this is one of 2 ways to pull in a file. So I will just show off the pull from email step. This is how folks start thinking about automating these flows, right? One of the nice things about this step, right, I can drag and drop a file, but if you're doing this at scale, if you need to parse 1,000 documents a day, obviously we don't expect you to drag and drop 1,000 times over. And so what we've done at Parabola here is added PDF parsing into our pull from inbound email step. And so what we have here is an email address that is unique to this specific flow. And you can tell any email that comes to this email address, we're going to pull data from the email attachment and what kind of file we want that we should expect or we should parse with. And you can see this is not just PDFs that we're pulling. We also have support for a number of additional file types. But again, if I were to select PDF here with AI, you'll see that we actually have the exact same settings that are populated here. We will just preset these, and then every time an email comes into this address, Parabola will kick off this flow, run that file through this parsing logic. And then again, when I show a more production case, you can see how we connect from this input of data, bringing it into Parabola, to actually being able to work with it and action on it. Great. So let me now go over to a more production level use case. I'll come back to this because I think it's really helpful to these numbers, this data doesn't mean a whole lot unless you see what's actually behind them. So here we're looking at a freight invoice. And like I said, one of the most common use cases we see is on the file that I was showing you before. We want to understand, does the sum of all of my line items that I'm being billed for on this invoice equal to the total on the invoice, right? Very often there's a lot of human involvement, potential for manual error. Maybe there's an item on here that wasn't actually delivered or charged. It's still reflected in the total. If you're processing thousands, hundreds, but especially thousands, tens of thousands of these invoices, you can't be expected to do this at scale. And so I've seen many customers who only are auditing invoices above a certain dollar amount. It's just the volume is too high to possibly start to be able to, or even think about doing them for lower volume use cases that they just don't. And so what they're probably sitting on a substantial amount of errors that are just going unlooked because they don't think there's a tool out there that can help them identify these things at scale. Enter Parabola, where with this flow, I can demonstrate how with this PDF file, we can go from ingesting the information, comparing the total number on that file to the sum of the parts. And then ultimately the output here is we are emailing a CSV attachment, alerting a specific team or a specific individual of the exact invoices that are problematic so we can go and quickly work towards resolution. So again, if we open up the first part of this, it's pulling the same data that we were previously doing in the smaller example. Looking at the charge descriptions, the charge amounts, and then you can see here we're pulling in some additional information. PO number being one that very often, particularly folks who are looking to combine this data with an ERP, I know that they are oftentimes doing that join on the basis of either an invoice number or a PO number. And so it makes sense for us to get that information here and carry it throughout the flow. Now we're going to start talking about what we can do in terms of transformational steps in Parabola. So once we have this information, we now want to calculate what is the sum of these charge amounts. And so that's where our sum by group step comes in. And again, just to give you a sense of just how many of these different steps we have, we like to say that anything you can do in an Excel workbook or in Google Sheets, you can easily do in Parabola as well. Whether that's combining, almost as if similar to how you would do a join in a SQL statement, to a pivot, right? Like you were doing a VLOOKUP in Excel, or filtering, sorting, etc. Parabola has steps to, without you having to write a single formula, without you having to do anything like that, can come into these steps, a simple to understand UI and get the output that would otherwise require you to manually do that work in an Excel workbook. And so in this case, what we're doing here is summing the column charge amount and grouping it by invoice number. And what's so great about Parabola is you can see the data that came in and the data that's coming out based on our transformation. And so here you can see we have one invoice number, but you can imagine a file where we had 50 invoices. What we would do is for every unique invoice number value, sum the charge amount column. And you can see here what the output is for this one. The invoice number, again, coming straight from the PDF file. And here is the sum of the charge amount. Now, for those who were paying attention earlier and maybe caught it on this previous page, the total here is $182,673. And if I go back to what the sum of those individual line items is, you'll see that we're off considerably. So about a $13,000 overcharge on the invoice, comparing the total to the sum of the parts. But how do we know that, right? We were able to look at the document and see it, but we can't possibly be expected, like I was saying, to look at thousands of these every day. And we need a tool that can help us do that at scale, which is where Parabola can be so impactful. And so what we're doing with the rest of this flow, and I'll talk through it, is identifying that discrepancy and then actually alerting the team of it. And so if this is right here, pulling the table from the PDF file where we're getting the sum of the component parts, we also have another step where we're telling the AI, I just actually want you to pull the total. And so you can see how this was set up. Again, our AI was able to auto-detect a column, invoice totals. We said we just want the total US dollars. And we want to add a key here, the invoice number. And so we're given a very simple 2-column, 1-row table. We format these similarly, right? So that we're putting everything in dollars. And you can see again, just how simple this is in Parabola. Format this column, invoice subtotal as dollars. We try to pre-populate, make this as easy as possible. How you're working right now, whether it's in Excel, whether it's in a BI tool, you can achieve a similar result and look at the numbers the same way you are currently in Parabola. But we allow you to connect between those systems, move data, push data in a way that any single tool itself likely cannot do. So now what we're doing, once we have we're comfortable with each individual component, we will then next do a combination. And so now we're taking from two separate tables and making them into one. And we're doing a match just like we would with a SQL statement, or an inner join in this case, on the invoice number. So we have one invoice number because one table and second table had the same invoice number. And we see here the line items total and the subtotal from the invoice. And now here we're starting to put together and have in one place what we visually saw just flipping through the PDF file previously. What we need to do though is just the fact that we have these two numbers is meaningless. We need to add a math column here, is what we call this step, to identify the invoice discrepancy. And so now here you can see I threw from the cuff that it was $13,000, but actually the discrepancy is $12,757. And we want to then again format that similarly to be as a dollar, and we can also just add in another math column to present that discrepancy as a percentage point. So this is a 7.5% discrepancy. Fairly substantial when we're talking about a $170,000 invoice. To have a 7% discrepancy, to be able to instantaneously, upon receipt of that invoice, identify that discrepancy rather than after the fact, maybe after it's gone through your AP process, to only then realize you have an issue, then have to reach out to the vendor after the fact. What Parabola can do is the second it sees the PDF file, tell you this is an issue and flag it urgently. So then what we're next doing is, okay, we know we have this issue with this particular invoice, and we want to set a rule. We need to escalate to this team if there's a discrepancy of above 3%. And in that case, you can have this sent to them via email. It can come to them as a Slack message. Parabola gives you the tools to push that information from Parabola, again, back to where your team is already working. Could also send it to a Google Sheet, to a CSV file. But what's most important is you want to set a rule that if there's if a particular invoice in this example has a discrepancy of greater than 3%, we need to notify the team. If it's below 3%, we don't want them to have unnecessary work. We don't want them to have busy work looking at invoices that don't need to be QA'd. Instead, they should only be spending their time focusing on these problematic or erroneous invoices. And so in this case, we set the invoice discrepancy percentage to greater than 3, and that leaves our one row. Just again to demonstrate like the speed at which you can do this in real time with Parabola. Let's say I wanted to set that invoice discrepancy percentage to 10%. I could show updated results. You could see how this is what's coming in. And then you'll see that actually what's coming out is now nothing. There was not a single row in my input data set that had a discrepancy of greater than 10%. And so we would pass no information onto this email that we would be sending to our team. And again, we'll change it back to 3. You can see I can leave this flow and take other actions while this is being calculated. And again, when I change to 3, this particular row, greater than 3%, 7.5. That means we need to take our final action here, which is to alert our team with an email. We click in here, again, incredibly easy to configure. We want to email billing at Parabola. We want to we can customize the subject. We can customize the body with dynamic fields directly from our results. And we can also say, if someone responds to this email, here's who they will reply to. And you'll see our attachment here, which is the CSV with the output of the problematic invoices. Taking a step back, if you were to think about how you would go from a physical or a digital PDF file to an email to your team, that could very often, you'd be talking about engineering resources, having to get multiple tools, one that does the parsing, one that does the calculations. You might yourself have to do a lot of that calculating work in a Google Sheet. Then maybe you're going to manually send that email every day. With Parabola here in a single flow, we are doing this in a total of about 12 Parabola steps here. And we can set this up such that every time an email comes in with this PDF file, it can automatically run this process for you, generate this email. So if you think about not only the time that is saved in terms of manually doing this process or having a team automatically or with their eyes review these files, you can also think about the cost aversion in terms of not having to reallocate engineering resources to build a custom solution, not having to start a relationship with multiple vendors that could do PDF parsing only and maybe not the rest of the flow. What's so exciting and where I think we're seeing so many of our customers have such great success with Parabola is the ability to do all of that in one place. All of that in one place while leveraging AI automation in such a way that is responsible, highly configurable. You as a team or a person can have oversight and visibility into how that AI is interacting with your data. And so I think something we're so thrilled about. This is obviously just one of the thousands of different ways that we've seen our customers use this tool to really at scale extract this information. Like I said, we've seen to date now over 100,000 pages that are parsed, which is so exciting. So with that said, I know that's a huge mouthful for me, and so I so appreciate everyone taking the time to talk through this step. As you can probably tell, I'm incredibly passionate about this. I think just as someone who gets to spend time with prospective customers and existing customers, and just see that instantaneous wow moment when our PDF parser not only pulls information, but also allows them to action on and use that information in ways that they previously thought would never be possible. I'm just so thrilled that I'm able to have the opportunity here to talk about it. And again, really do appreciate folks taking the time this afternoon. I'm now going to leave a couple minutes here for questions, but I would just say, I see a question here in the Q&A about seeing this workflow. Yes, if you're an existing customer and you're curious to kind of mess around with this, more than happy to anonymize some of it and make sure you get a version. And then if you're someone else on the phone who's or dialing in who's not currently a Parabola customer, but has a PDF use case you're curious about, has additional questions, just wants to book some time with me to talk PDF files, let's please certainly make time. The easiest way probably is to go to our website, parabola.io, and request a demo. But also I think as part of this webinar as well, we'll be in touch afterwards just to check in, get your feedback, and you can always as well let us know if there are files, use cases, et cetera, that you'd like someone in the room with you there to help you build. Great. I think just looking at the questions, I'll give folks here a couple more minutes in case you do have any questions. But like I said, we can also be in touch afterwards. Want to make sure that I realize sometimes the one-to-many style of questions might not feel like, hey, I have this very specific PDF and I need one-to-one support. Like I said, more than happy to make sure we find the time for you all to do that. So maybe can plan to follow up individually with folks if there are no questions for the full group. Awesome. Great. Well, thanks again, everyone. Like I said, and like Ben was mentioning, so excited to be kicking off these product demos, really hoping to make this a bi-weekly thing. We're doing so much exciting work at Parabola that we're just thrilled to have the chance to show it off and put it in front of both existing customers and hopefully some future ones as well. So thanks again, everyone, for taking the time this afternoon to talk about Parabola and learn a bit about our PDF parsing, and looking forward to seeing you all at the next one.